Unity through
Reparations.
Uhuru. Let's give another round of applause for our annual president. Nevel, our great speakers at this event tonight. And I want to join and let us again salute the amazing leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Everything that Chairman Penny just said about Deputy Chair Onazane Yeshitela, Uhuru. And I also want to salute all, the Uhuru Furniture Store and Secretary General Allison Haney of the African People's Solidarity Team is back there. All of the people who work in this store and are part of this institution, and also the organizers of this event, including Connor Boss, who is going to be moving to Philadelphia. Also recognize that people came to this event from Washington, D.C., as well as from Newark, Delaware, and from Boston, and probably other places that I'm not mentioning. So salute to all of you who are here. And I am actually going to stop speaking for a minute, and we're going to show another video, which is an extremely powerful video. And then I'm going to come back up and say a few things, and then be joined by Ruby Gittleson to talk about raising resources tonight. Before I leave, since President Yejide mentioned Tim Wise, I figured I would tell you the story that was mentioned. So, by the way, I love that no one knew who he was. I think the Uhuru movement can take some credit for that. So basically, okay, so Tim Wise was in San Diego a few years ago, and he was giving one of his boring $7,000 speeches. Yes, $7,000 is how much that guy gets paid to go drone on about what racism, except for me, I'm one of the good ones or whatever. And one of our members, her name is Wendy, she got up during the Q&A, and she was like, if you really are against racism and the oppression of black people and everything, please, you have to support Black Star Industries and the African People's Socialist Party. We need to pay reparations. What do you have to say to that, Mr. Wise? And he was like, oh, you know what? Q&A is over. I actually have to get going, so I gotta go get my $7,000 check and leave, so I'm just gonna go now. So he left, and the event was over. So she went on Facebook, on his Facebook page, and she was like, Tim Wise, why didn't you answer my question? What will you pay reparations to the Uhuru movement and Black Star Industries if you're really against all the things he claimed to be against? And then he came back in and he was like, you guys are a cult and all this kind of stuff. And he said something, this is my favorite Tim Wise quote. He said, you claim to be the vanguard. Well, any movement that claims to be the vanguard, consider me your enemy. Which we do. So. Bigger honesty. And we will see you in the revolution. So, anyway. But then, okay, then we put out an article, last thing I'll say on this, we put out an article from the Uhuru Solidarity Movement called The White Opportunism of Tim Wise versus the African Revolution. And all we did with the article was we took any topic of capitalism, racism, the police, and we took a quote from Tim Wise, which was just like a paragraph of drivel, just pure gobbledygook. And then after that, and then here's Chairman Omali Yeshitela, and it was like stellar, beautiful quote from the chairman breaking it down, and just let the people decide for themselves. And that's why none of you know who Tim Wise is. So, all right. On that note, I'm going to show this video. This is written and narrated by Chairwoman Penny Hess, and this is about reparations to African people. And then I'm going to come back and talk about why and how we in this room tonight can go beyond just talking about reparations and actually engage in the act of reparations. In this event tonight, we want to raise resources, reparations towards the Black Power Blueprint at an amount that is actually about 1/5 of what Tim Wise would make if he were speaking at a speaking engagement. So it really puts it into perspective. But it's a very important goal. It's part of this Days of Reparations tour, and also be talking about how you can join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement if you are not already a member. So let's go to the video. Uhuru.
Slavery is both our legacy. It's mine and it's yours. You inherited the wealth of slavery. have anything to do with it. I didn't have anything to do with it. Slavery is both our legacies. It's mine and it's yours. You inherited the wealth of slavery, and I inherited the poverty of slavery. I am determined to change this legacy that's been left up to me. If you don't change yours for yourself, I'm going to change yours too. So it's best for you to show me.
The struggle to make honest reparations to African people means we come to terms with the brutal truth of the world as it really is, as experienced by oppressed peoples of this world. Reparations acknowledges the millions of Africans who were ripped out of their land and civilization, who were chained body to body in the holds of ships, brought violently to labor for free on this land stolen from the indigenous people, so that you and I could enjoy a lifestyle we assume to be our birthright. Reparations acknowledges the millions of human beings severed from language and culture, from home and family, mother from child, to produce the wealth for us so that our families could rest on a foundation of seemingly unassailable security. Reparations acknowledges the fact that our grandparents held lynchings of African men and women whose tormented bodies hung from trees as the centerpiece of North American entertainment enjoyed by thousands of us. Reparations is not charity. Reparations lets white people acknowledge that, yes, life on the tortured backs of humanity is intolerable, and that our existence as parasites sucking the blood of the peoples of the world is unendurable. Therefore, reparations to African people is in our interest. That in the culture of imperialism, the pursuit of mindless and obligatory happiness can only be purchased with drugs, alcohol, consumerism, conformity, and meaningless pleasure to mask the terrible despair and pain of colonial reality which ceaselessly rises to the surface of our beings. The struggle for white people's reparations to African people acknowledges the inevitable course of history in which those who have suffered and suffocated as the cornerstone of this corrupt system must turn the gun on U.S. imperialism, not to perpetrate violence, but to end it. And that if we are ever to stand in solidarity with African people and the peoples of the world in an honest way, we must carry the weight of our inherited past and present, the children of the slave masters facing the children of the enslaved. We recognize the fundamental reality that our long, violent, parasitic relationship with African people underlies the truth that Africans created the foundation on which our stolen house rests, and that any struggle against U.S. imperialism is necessarily bound to the leadership of African workers in the struggle for independence and socialism. Reparations recognizes that revolution is not waged on empty words or ideas of racism, but in the real seizure of political power, resources, and means of production as the basis of Black power to the African community. And that North American people can unite with our genuine interest in the destruction of this system by building a movement to destroy the resource and power base of U.S. imperialism from within our front, where those resources have been hoarded, reparations into the hands of the African Revolution. Reparations recognizes that only the African People's Socialist Party, the vanguard, the advanced detachment, can solve the problems left to the world by the death grip of parasitic capitalism in the struggle, no matter how difficult, to end the pain of half a millennium of terror through self-determination, self-government, and power, to make sure no vicious terrorists armed with weapons of mass destruction and hideous ideas in their heads can ever hurt any African person ever again. The leadership of the organized African working class will end the system of oppressors and the oppressed, turn the past into power, science into poetry for the people, African internationalism into the currency of the workers, restoring an earth without borders where all human beings can live, no one at the expense of others. The struggle for white people's reparations to African people allows us to become new communist human beings for whom the suffering of any child on this planet is as painful as the suffering of our own child, where our interests are one with the interests of colonized workers for whom there is no rest until African independence is achieved, U.S. imperialism is destroyed, and power is in the hands of the people. Build the movement for white people's reparations to African people. Uhuru. Reparations now!
Reparations
now!
All right. So I just really want to salute that powerful video that was based on a piece that Chairwoman Penny wrote. And just wanted to say a few things. So again, I am a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee and the chair of our mass organization, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, which means I have the honor of working under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party to build the movement, the mass movement for white reparations to African people, and go into other white communities and organize other white people like me to take the stand of solidarity with African liberation, concretely through building a movement for reparations, through building a culture of reparations to African people. And this is in this period of crisis of imperialism and basically the downfall of the American way, the American empire. The African People's Socialist Party is on the ascendancy, it's on the rise, it's growing everywhere, and by extension, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is gaining traction in white communities all throughout the world, even in Australia. And right now, during this event, there's a similar event happening, a viewing party in Asheville, North Carolina. And these are of the 11 cities where these days of reparations to African people are taking place. As was mentioned, St. Louis, Huntsville, Alabama, St. Petersburg, Florida, Gainesville, Florida, here in Philadelphia, Asheville, North Carolina, next stop, New York, then to Boston. Next weekend, there will be an event in Perth, Australia, where they're building solidarity with African people, including what they refer to as the Aboriginal people of that land, because Australia is like the United States, like Israel, another white nationalist colonial settler state built on stolen land. And also in Portland and Seattle, there will be days of reparations to African people, and that's just the beginning. It's just the beginning. Next year we intend to at least double the number of cities where these days of reparations to African people will happen. So right now we want to talk about how you can participate. If you came to this event tonight, you want to change the world, you want to be part of this amazing revolutionary process led by the African working class, how you can join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and how we can pay reparations to African people as white people. So first of all, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement has 3 principles of unity. They're very simple, very, very simple. So if you're on the fence, should I join or not? Here it is. Number 1, we're under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, period. We wouldn't exist if not for the African People's Socialist Party. Number 2, we organize white people for reparations to African people, which means we don't go into colonized communities, African neighborhoods, Mexican neighborhoods, as white saviors to try to bring the revolution. No, our job is to go organize white people. And that's one of our principles of unity. And that's another thing that distinguishes us from the white left. And number 3 is that we stand in solidarity with African people's right to lead their own struggle for national liberation. And now that I've stated what the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is, I want to briefly talk about what the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is not, some of which has been mentioned already, including in that video. The Uhuru Solidarity Movement is not a charity organization. And to take that a step further, not only are we not charity, we are the anti-charity organization. We're the extreme polar opposite of a charity organization. Because charity is there to maintain power and resources in the control in the hands of white people and white power. And it's actually a very offensive concept if you think about it, because charity, if you think of the word charity, like, what's wrong with charity? You're like doing something nice for someone who's suffering. Well, we're a colonizer nation whose entire material reality rests on the stolen labor and lives of African and indigenous people. We can't do anything nice for them. Like giving a penny a day to Rwanda, you're not doing something nice for African people. White people literally cannot do something nice for African people. It's impossible. We can't actually be charitable. What charity means is the only suffering that is alleviated by white people's charity is our own guilt. Right. That's it. Right. We feel a little bit better because, well, I did my part, you know. And then you have extreme examples of that with Angelina Jolie and Madonna, having collections of African children that they steal from the continent. That's the highest expression of colonial charity. It's disgusting. And that's not what we're about. We're anti-charity because charity maintains the status quo and keeps power and control in the hands of white people. We are not about unlearning racism. We're not an anti-racist organization. And sometimes that might be like jarring, like, what? Well, racism is bad. Well, sure, of course. But we can unlearn our racism and become enlightened white people and still be on the pedestal of the oppression of African people. Right. You can go to 100 Tim Wise lectures, and Africans are still going to be gunned down in the streets, and white people are still going to be living our lifestyle. The material reality, colonialism, what President Yejide and Chairwoman Finney has talked about, remains intact. And we are not, as was mentioned, we're not white allies to people of color, etc. It's not what we are. We're not. And that's a dime a dozen. There's so many white ally groups that are about, you know, I don't even know what they're about. They're just about basically having, what do you call it, virtue signaling or something? Like basically promoting themselves as the good white people and being able to be seen with a Black Lives Matter sign in front of your house that just gentrified the black community. So that's not what we're about, and we're unique. We're the only organization of white people that works under the leadership of a revolutionary party of the black working class to fight for reparations to African people. I challenge you to find another one. There's not. There's not. There's a million charity organizations, there's a million white ally organizations, there's a million white anti-racist organizations. It's literally a cottage industry of capitalism. Yes. But there's only one organization of white reparations to African people under the leadership of the vanguard party of the African working class, and that's the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. So, finally, before I bring up our second speaker who's going to talk about the resources that we want to raise tonight, I wanted to say quickly, and I'm trying to like list this out, just go through it quickly because so much has already been said. 5 reasons why, if you're white, reparations to African people should be the #1 thing in your life. Because this event is not just to win you to support reparations, like you walk out like, you know what, I actually agree with reparations now. We want to leave this room with the understanding that reparations should be our #1 priority in life. It should be the most important thing to us is to rectify this horrific relationship that we've had to African people for the last 600 years. It should be #1. It shouldn't just be added to the bullet points of like, this is progressive, like, I'm against sexism, against racism, I'm also for reparations. No, that's not it. Like, #1, and then everything else comes through that. Everything else is addressed through reparations to African people. Here's why. 1, it's the right thing to do. It is. It is a moral question. I mean, we talk about, like Chairwoman Penny was talking about the lynchings that white people carried out. It's the right thing to do. We don't get to just wander back into the human family and say, all right, we're back, we're cool now, you know, like we committed horrendous, we still are. We still are. We, white people. My actual hands may not have done it, but I'm part of the collective of white people that benefit from it and inherit that legacy and inherit that memory, even in our psychology. The DNA of who we are as human beings is built on a legacy of horrific violence against African people. So yes, it's the right thing to do on a moral level. 2, it's the smart thing to do if we intend to have a future on this planet. And that's not an exaggeration. It's not an exaggeration. Penny mentioned that climate change, this system of white power imperialism is going to destroy the planet Earth. It's not even a matter of like, do you support capitalism or socialism? Like, do you support this? It's, do you support a continuation of life on the planet Earth or not? That's the question that's being asked with reparations to African people and solidarity with the African Revolution. Even the United Nations, an imperialist entity, has come to the conclusion that unless there is an unprecedented shift in, or unprecedented global economic reconfiguration, as they said, then by 2040, the environment will be at the point where life won't be able to sustain itself on this planet anymore. Well, guess what? An unprecedented global economic reconfiguration is precisely the goal of the organization that you're supporting when you contribute, when you pay reparations, when you join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. So the future of the planet actually depends on the success of the African Revolution. So that's number 2. Number 3, it is the fight against all oppression. And we are internationalists. Reparations to African people makes it possible for us to stand in international solidarity with all oppressed peoples. Because I'm sure some of you have heard this thing from other white people where it's like, well, what about, okay, oh, black reparations, what about the Native Americans? Which they don't actually care about indigenous people. You suddenly pretend to care about indigenous people when you can use it as an argument against reparations to African people, when the African People's Socialist Party is the only organization that says this land should go back to the indigenous people. And the African People's Socialist Party has stood with all oppressed peoples, the indigenous people of this land, including the Mexican people, the Palestinian people, the people of the Middle East, people who are dying right now in Yemen. If we want to genuinely be in solidarity with them, we can't walk over the bodies of dead African people in this country to protest what the same government is doing thousands of miles away. The way we really take a stand against what's happening abroad is reparations to African people, starting with solidarity with African people inside this country and around the world. That's number 3. Number 4, it's our fight back too. Reparations to African people, not Occupy Wall Street. Reparations from Wall Street. That's the real bullseye shot in the brain of Wall Street and capitalism, is reparations to African people. It is the lethal weapon against capitalism, against Wall Street, is reparations to African people. And for any sector of the white population that faces any pain or oppression or marginalization, which does happen on the pedestal of the massive colonial oppression of everybody else on the planet. Yeah, yes, there is oppression and marginalization and persecution of LGBTQ, of white women, of white workers, etc., on that pedestal. But the solution is not to try to make the pedestal more comfortable for a greater percentage of the white population. The solution is to get off the pedestal and join in solidarity with the Black Revolution to destroy the pedestal so that all human beings can be free. So reparations to African people is our weapon against a nasty, disgusting white ruling class that we hate. I hate the white ruling class. We all hate the white ruling class. But the only way we can make that more than just words is reparations to African people. That's an atomic bomb against white power and the white ruling class. And including Jews, by the way, just to quickly say, as a Jewish person, or someone from a Jewish family, that now there's all this talk in the media because 8 Jewish people were shot in Pittsburgh that I really find it offensive, not to go into a whole as I promise. But just the whole thing, like the second Holocaust is here because 8 Jewish people were killed in Pittsburgh, and you know, all this kind of stuff, and just raising up this question to obscure the fact that this is happening in a system built on the daily murder of African people, of Palestinian people by the Jewish state, against indigenous people who live on concentration camps and die at 42 years old, average life expectancy. Like that, all these shootings are happening on that context, in that system. And it's been happening every single day without protest, without a tear shed from the white population until it suddenly happens to a sector of white people. And the solution, even for those Jewish people in Pittsburgh, is not to try to make America better for Jewish people or something like that, or try to fight anti-Semitism or whatever. The solution is reparations to African people. Yes. Reparations to African people is the weapon for anyone who wants to get right with this social system. So finally, it is our way into the human family. And that's something that's been threaded throughout everything that we've said so far. That the chairman of Molly Shatella has made this profound statement that we've been suffering from 600 years of voluntary exile from the human family as white people. We put ourselves in self-imposed isolation. Like, we don't even know what humanity is as white people. we don't. To the extent that if you go into a music store, there's a genre called world. Like we separate, like everything is separated, like there's like our music and then there's world. The world. We're isolated from the world, the peoples of the world. And the way that we can end that isolation, which is a horrendous reality to be a part of, is to join the human family through reparations to African people. That's the only way. That's the only way. And being under the leadership of the party, you experience the humanity of the African working class, and it changes you. It changes you. So this is what this is about, and it's the beautiful, hopeful, optimistic, positive, revolutionary culture of reparations to African people versus the depressing, despairing, hopeless nightmare of white culture, of the culture of zombies and vampires and doom and gloom and destruction and nothingness. This is the way forward for all of humanity, including us, if we are smart enough to take the right stand. So now we want to talk about where the reparations go and how we can make reparations a reality tonight. So I'd like to call up Comrade Ruby Gittleson to talk more about that with us tonight.